Hello, hello, hello. Happy New Year. I hope everybody had a lovely Christmas holiday. This is our special edition of Instagram Cooks. Well, AZ Cooks Instagram Live edition, except it's not live. We are coming to you taped from prior to the holiday so that everybody who is working on this could be at home with their loved ones, celebrating the ringing in of 2021 with each other and the people that they love, just as I hope you are doing, and that we're all taking what may have been one of the worst years in human history, certainly the worst year that I've lived through in my lifetime, and just kicking it to the curb. So long, 2020, we didn't like one gosh darn minute of you. Actually, not true. There were some very redeemable moments, and we learned a lot of good things about ourselves, and I think we have a roadmap laid before us on how to heal ourselves and how to heal our communities if we all just get active in doing it. So let's be positive about this thing. But just for another second, can we complain? 2020 just sucked. Just sucked. So let's kick off the new year the right way, right? With caviar. So here's the deal. The moment anybody hears the word caviar, they think very, very, very expensive. Caviar is a Russian word for salted fish eggs, most typically applied to sturgeon eggs. But even within sturgeon eggs, there's so many different kinds. I use the lowest grade of real sturgeon caviar, some of the pastes and sevrugas and small broken eggs and things like that in omelets, in pastas, in places I don't want to waste money on the fancy stuff. And as somebody who loves caviar and tastes it constantly, I will tell you that I have discovered two fantastic products that I want you to know about. But what I'm going to do for you today, the way I'm going to utilize it, and by all means, you eat caviar the way you want to do it, is to show you a taco that J.P. Samuelson and I developed for the Austin Food and Wine Festival about a year and a half ago. They have a signature event called Rock Your Taco. And Rock Your Taco at Austin Food and Wine is the night everyone loves, because who doesn't love tacos? And you get 15, 20 of the best chefs in the country all competing against each other in a venue atmosphere that everyone actually comes to try to win. Some amazing chefs have won it. I think of the 6 or 7 years they've done it, I think Tyson Cole has won it 4 or 5 times. He has just created some genius tacos and invested a lot into developing some really fantastic recipes. For many years, I judged Rock Your Taco. And 2 years ago, we spoke to the event organizers and said, this year, can we compete? And they said, sure, we'd love to. We didn't think you wanted to. So off we went to Austin with our taco and about 40 pounds of caviar, because you have to make 2,000 tacos, right? And this is the actual taco that we made. It has fantastic caviar, a nice slice of gravlax, and some bitter lemon puree that we mixed with homemade creme fraiche and some chives. It's that simple. Yes, luxury ingredients. And oh, by the way, we used these small Chinese bao and fried them to create our taco. Drop them in some hot oil. They don't take very long to come up to temperature and to get brown on the outside.
What kind of oil is that?
This is peanut oil. You can use canola. You can use any frying vegetable oil. The one thing you don't want to do is overcook them, because then you can't spread them enough to get your ingredients inside. But you can see how quickly this browns. And I'm actually going to make it in this one. And, there's only so many of these things you can eat. They're kind of rich. And by the way, you want to roll these up in flour tortillas and make a caviar taquito, by all means, go ahead. But you see, I'm about to show you when I flip this one, do you see how it's sort of spreading open? Once that happens, they're done. You want it a little darker, go ahead, but you're kind of playing with a little bit of fire. Right, so a couple seconds in the oil, I'm just gonna pat this. And at this point, it's very, very pliable. You just place it down in this little taco holder. Now, recipes for the gravlax are on our website at andrewzimmern.com. And I just put a little bit of that there, a little bit of this bitter lemon creme fraiche. Then take something that isn't metallic and put a nice big dollop of caviar there. And then what I do is I just pinch this and just push down. That way, when people take their first bite, some of that caviar is going to hold in there and not squirt all over the floor. So again, a dollop of this bitter lemon creme fraiche next to the gravlax. And this time, I'm going to use some wild-caught Hasselback caviar. It's blacker and shinier from our friends at Warsaw Caviar. And I'm going to talk about these two caviars in a second because you can see how different they are. And we need some chives on this. I want to show you a little chef trick. Some chives from the windowsill or the herb garden or from your grocer or whatever. All you have to do is roll these in a little bit of paper toweling. The reason that I do that is it holds the chives together so that I can slice some chives for garnish, and then this whole thing just gets dropped in a Ziploc bag, and the moisture from the paper toweling will actually help keep the chives a little fresher. But we love some fresh chive on there. And that, my friends, is a beautiful caviar, gravlax, and bitter lemon creme fraiche taco. So anyway, a word about caviar. You can buy some fantastic farm-raised sturgeon caviars. The Sterling Company, fantastic, right? Lots of, I personally find Roe Caviar, R-O-E, great online resource. And lots of celebrity chefs have gotten behind some pretty incredible different caviars. I know the Regalis Company carries a whole bunch of them. Brown Trading online carries a whole bunch of them. And there are those among us that like to splurge every once in a while and eat 5 or 6 ounces of caviar alone. Omelet on some blini, right out of the tin, however you want to do it. But the two best values in caviar that I have found in the last couple of years are the two caviars that are right here. Look at this stunning, firm, pearl gray, ocetricized caviar. This, I think, is one of the finest products that you could find. And it's got a great story behind it. I just want to show you what this is. This is wild paddlefish caviar. It is produced by the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. Now, about 4 years ago, I went to make a TV show, Bizarre Foods Route 66. It was a special episode. Me driving Route 66, checking out different places. And I did a paddlefish fishing story with the guys from the Conservation Department. And as we're sitting there, trolling for our fish, they whipped out some caviar and said, "You want to try some paddlefish caviar?" And I was like, "Oh my God, paddlefish caviar." And I told them the story about how 7 years earlier I'd been in Missouri, outside of St. Louis, doing the same thing. And a lot of people were catching paddlefish that day on the Mississippi, and they were throwing away the roe. And in the episode, I went and I showed them how to make a brine and to soak the eggs, which essentially salts them, and then lift them out and separate the filament and dry it and essentially make a quick poor man's caviar. But you could also then cook with the eggs and do all kinds of things, much in the same way that you do with shad roe, except instead of using the whole sets, you sliced them and floured them and pan-fried them. And they started snickering. And by the way, cameras are rolling. I said, "What's so funny?" And it's like, well, we saw that episode. And so we sent Bob over here to caviar school in Europe, and now he makes this. And all the proceeds from this wild paddlefish caviar, the profit, because they're a state agency, goes back in to the general fund that helps keep the forests and rivers and lakes clean and clear in the state of Oklahoma, which I thought was like the coolest story of all time, because most people take their fish, they get a certain number of fish that you can pull legally from the waters as part of their licensing, and they donate the roe back because they don't do anything with it. And it's a beautiful noble circle. It's one of the coolest food stories ever. So then I became a customer, and then I started telling tons of friends about it. And so you can go on the website there and you can look into getting their caviar. I know with the COVID year behind them, they had a very, very, very slow year. And so it might be a little back ordered, but I know by springtime, they're going to be back up and running and this will be available. And then because of all of our caviar talk, this is a brand new company. I have not been aware of them for a long time. You can find them at warsawcaviar.com. They grade this as what's called mollisol, which means least amount of salt, right? You need salt to cure the roe. There are some eggs that are oversalted. This is, by putting the word mollisol on there, it's their way of telling you they've used the least amount of salt. This is also wild caught, but it is a well-managed fishery. And everyone knows I'm a big proponent of aquaculture. I think aquaculture needs to sit side by side with wild fisheries. And if we can make a market for this and then transition to both wild and aquaculture, I think it's a win-win-win, both for American fishermen, our seafood industry, and the dining public. And that is just a beautiful, mild flavored caviar, decent amount of pop in the egg, but for the dollars, I would grade both of these as very, very inexpensive, as in very inexpensive, as in you'll be surprised at how good they are. Inexpensive caviar, when I was little, was always that lumpfish stuff pasteurized in the jars at the supermarket. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about legit stuff that you could serve to anyone in any fashion, but inexpensive enough that you could put a big dollop on top of lemon pasta. You could serve 20 of these to friends who come in the door and not be stingy about the portion. And I think it's a win-win-win for everyone. Now, the gravlax. I've been making gravlax my entire life, and I absolutely adore it. It is a cured salmon. Take wedges of salmon. We put a salt, sugar, and herb composition on top of it. You let it sit for 48 to 72 hours, depending on how big the slice of fish is. You then take the rub off and let it air dry for 48 to 72 hours. Then you wipe it again if any moisture has been given off, and you wrap it, and you have this beautiful cured salmon. It will last forever. This beautiful piece comes from our freezer. We defrosted it in the refrigerator over the last 3 or 4 days, and it is literally indistinguishable from the fresh stuff. Why would frozen fish defrost this beautifully? Because the sugar, salt, herb mixture takes all the moisture out of it. It's the process of curing that makes the fish dry enough to freeze beautifully. And the seasoning takes all of that fishy flavor out of what is a very oily fish in the salmon. So I would encourage you to look online at our recipe for gravlax. And then this lemon and creme fraiche mixture is something that we use all the time. It also has a great story. We were at the South Beach Wine and Food Festival about 3 or 4 years ago. Chef Jose Andres was being honored. JP and I were asked to cook one of the courses. Another one of the chefs was Michael Voltaggio. And he had a bitter lemon puree as a elemental composition on a braised lamb belly course that he was doing. And we just couldn't stop eating this stuff with the lamb. It's so phenomenal. He shared the recipe with us. We're going to share it with you on our website, andrewzimmern.com. The recipe will be there for bitter lemon puree, and you can give it a try. Super, super easy. All you need is a high-speed blender and a stovetop and a microwave, and you will be able to make this fantastic, fantastic goodie yourself. Now, as if this whole presentation wasn't enough, and by the way, I have some non-alcoholic Bloody Marys here. So I'm going to enjoy a cold, frosty 0.0 beverage while Vicky asked me a couple of questions, because we have questions that come in all the time that are what we call evergreens that we just don't have time to answer. So today is your day to get them answered. Vicky, fire away. What do you got?
They're New Year's questions. So first we'll start with your New Year's resolutions. Do you have any?
New Year's resolutions. I don't believe in them. I do and the reason is very simple. Some people like to take one day a year and say, oh, I'm going to lose weight. Oh, I'm going to return more phone calls. Oh, I'm going to go off my phone more. Oh, I'm going to be nicer to my girlfriend, whatever. I don't do those kind of things. And the reason is as a recovering alcoholic, I have this sort of daily, weekly, monthly, every minute of the year practice that puts all those things in front of me. So I'm very conscious of what a shithead I am and how much work that I have to do to become a better human being. And I really mean that. So it's always kind of front of mind. So New Year's Eve, I just kind of say a little, throw some good energy out into the world that the year is better than the one before it. After 2020, I don't know how we could have a worse year, but I don't want to jinx it. But yes, that's my feeling on New Year's resolutions. And studies show like 85% of New Year's resolutions are broken. So maybe if you're making them, unless you're really good at holding them, maybe you want to skip that this year as well.
What was the biggest thing you've learned this past year?
I thought, I'm 59 years old. Life is not easy. It is fired at point blank range. We all have parents that die and kids that get sick and marriages and divorces and pets dying and job loss. And we none of us are immune. None of us are immune from the greatest joys of life and the greatest tragedies. And they happen instantaneously. We don't get a note under our door that says, get ready, something bad is going to happen today. And through all of that, I thought I was pretty good on the acceptance meter. I know that practicing acceptance is the answer to all my problems today, because the only thing that I have control over is my behavior and my attitudes, right? My behavior is all about reducing my reactivity, and my attitudes is just the way I think. And I think I've said it here before, you can't think your way into right acting, you can only act your way into right thinking. So I actually try to do things to increase my acceptance. And I found this year to be a mother in terms of my ability to accept some of the things that went on in my hometown of Minneapolis, to the beloved restaurant industry that I've worked in my entire life, still do. There were some real bitter pills that we swallowed this year. And I struggled with acceptance. So I think the thing that I learned this year was how important that is, because my level of frustration and unhappiness in life was in direct correlation to the lack of acceptance of a given person, place, or thing being exactly the way it was supposed to be at that moment. Acceptance is the answer to all of my struggles today, and it is really, this year was really challenging. So clearly I still have some work to do.
Pick 3 words to describe this past year.
Frightening, desperate, revelatory. Good question.
What's the single best thing that has happened this year?
The single best thing that happened this year?
You can pick a couple.
I didn't get COVID. Thank you, Vicky. we still have a night to go. Didn't get COVID. I wasn't able to, because of COVID lockdowns and a whole bunch of crazy reasons, I didn't see my son for 5 months. And when I finally got to see him in June, and went out to his boarding school and got a chance to actually reunite with him and spend time, because the phone calls and the FaceTimes just don't cut it. I realized I hadn't been separated from him for, nowhere near that long. The most I'd been separated from him was 2 or 3 weeks. And just how much any parent out there can relate. You just can't love anything as much as you love your kid. So that was the best. That day was the best day by far.
What about my baby? That doesn't count.
Hmm?
So what about my baby? That doesn't count.
Well, and second, but I mean right below, it's just that Noah watches and Naomi doesn't watch this. So I didn't have to please her. Really close second was holding Madeline and Paul's gorgeous little child.
Any recipes that have become
And third was Madeline returning to work after her maternity leave. Fourth was Madeline saying hello to me this morning. Clearly she needs a little boosting. She's had a rough day.
Any new recipes that you've tried this year that have become family favorites?
Oh my gosh, yes. And I actually make it now once every 10 days, and we keep saying we're going to demo it. And we sort of did, but not really. And I'm going to post a picture of it soon. But I make it all the time, and that is a traditional Beijing style fried meat sauce for noodles. They used to be called Peking noodles, and if you said that decades ago to anyone who lived in the then city of Peking, they would know exactly what you're talking about. It's a very sweet and salty, brown gravied ground meat pork sauce that goes on the top of noodles with just some scallions. Sometimes it's served with some pickled veg on the side. Actually, we made it for an Instagram Cooks, so you can look it up. It's fantastic, but I keep making it, and after 30 times now, I've really perfected it, and it's just, killer. And now what I do is I actually use a very thin Japanese somen noodle, which is a very thin wheat noodle, and I put it in a bowl with a little bit of broth, and then a big dollop of that really thick, gravy-ish reduced meat sauce on top, and the whole thing just becomes this slurpy joy. I eat the noodles and the meat, and some of that sauce drips down into the broth, and it's perfect.
What are you going to cook for New Year's?
My house, everything is closed.
No,
And
but
it's
what are you going to make?
100 degrees below zero. I am probably going to do, what am I doing? I already know what I'm doing. Prime rib of beef.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is?
4-bone prime rib of beef, and my son and I are going to cook it. Whatever his favorite sort of crispy potato thing, probably my twice cooked potatoes. He's like all kids. He's not a kid. He's about to be 16, and he's taller than me, but he loves shrimp cocktails. So we'll probably have that too. We'll watch movies, and we will probably stay up till midnight and, to 11 o'clock here in Minnesota, and watch the ball drop in Times Square, and then go to bed.
This is a question that we did get in past lives, but if there's a recipe that you wanted to pass on to your son, what would it be?
My grandmother's roast chicken.
Best books you've read this year?
Best books that I've read this year. Oh my gosh. What a fantastic question. Right after the George Floyd murder here in Minneapolis, I just dug through a whole bunch of stuff. There are a lot of reading lists going around for old white guys like me to read. And I read voraciously a ton of them. And the one that had the biggest impact on me was probably the autobiography of Malcolm X. I read that, I think, in high school or college for a class. But I had never sort of read it for quote unquote pleasure, where I didn't have to write a paper. I was just taking what I wanted to take from it. And the idea of systemic racism, I came into 2020 thinking one thing, and I'm very progressive. I'm very progressive. And now I truly believe that we are suffering from 401, 90% of our problems in this country are related to the 401 years of the agrarian slave economy that started over 4 centuries ago. That book blew me away. And the other one was Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the Earth. I'm blanking on the title of it. Go ahead. I just loved that one. Was superb, and I want to get this right. It is Between the World and Me. Incredible. And I made my son read it. If you've not read the autobiography of Malcolm X or Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the Earth and Me, I insist you do both.
What is something big or small that brings pleasure to your life right now?
Oh my gosh. Small. What's something small that I do? Cleaning my kitchen. I know that sounds really dorky, but I take tremendous satisfaction from it. And something big is, let me turn this off. Big would have to be, and I know I'm a one-trick pony, anything that I talk to my son about that 3 months later I hear him spitting back in a conversation with someone else. Or to me, as if he thought of it originally, which is usually the case. That's a big deal to a dad. When you're trying to teach your kids something that when they're teenagers and they actually get it, and sometimes you don't see that for months, is home run day.
You're telling that to Madeline so she knows.
Madeline I keep telling Madeline every day, you have a child whose age is measured in months, enjoy it now. Because once they learn to talk and say things like, fuck you, I'm leaving, it's really great. Nothing like, teenagers, love them.
Just anything you want to tell everybody that's watching as a New Year's and...
Well, I think I've sort of said it all. I mean, this is a wonderful, look, let's not underestimate the power of culturally how we mark time. Time is the most precious thing on planet Earth. It is the only thing that money can't buy, that no one can get more of, that it's impossible. There are no do-overs. It is the most elusive, quicksilver-like thing that we possess. Every morning when we get up, what are we going to do with our day? And I talk about this all the time, but there is, a guiding principle amongst some of the first peoples of this country that has come down to be called Cherokee wisdom. There are versions of it in Asian culture, in African tribal culture. You can see myths like this from the Mesopotamians. It is not confined to the Cherokee, but it has got their name on it, and I absolutely adore it. And the idea of this story is a father is talking to his son, and he describes that every morning when you get up, a great battle takes place within your soul between a good wolf and a bad wolf. And the good wolf is love and honesty and acceptance and kindness and truth-telling and other-centeredness and selflessness. And the bad wolf is all about avarice and greed and violence and evil. And they go to war every day in a vicious fight when you get up in the morning. And the father asks his son, do you know which wolf wins that battle every day? And the son looks at his dad and says, I don't, father. And the dad looks down at him and says, the wolf that you feed. And I love that because we do have a choice every single day as to how we want to show up. And the marking of time with the new year is a wonderful time to sort of make ideas present for ourselves and think about them and focus and concentrate on something. This year, I made it a big point. I have a huge problem with reactivity. And that's, putting a space between what I think and what I do, right? Have a thought, do something. Have a thought, do something. So you got to put a space there so you're not reactive. And that's been really cool. Don't know what I'm going to work on for next year, but when I think about that Cherokee wisdom as I go to sleep and 2020 turns into 2021, I'll come up with something and that will be my focus for the year. So I hope everyone has a chance to think about what their focus is going to be and make 2021 the best year ever. Thank you.